to That Lit Astro Chick, the astrology channel where we will cover the natal charts of authors, artists, and anyone else or anything else that I find interesting. Today's natal chart has been brought to you by the scandal of December of 2023 that was in BookTube. As a writer, I should be in BookTube more often, or perhaps less often because I should be spending my time writing books. But I was able to cover, I was able to listen to a few of the videos that were about the scandal that happened with Cait Corrain. So Cait Corrain is a young author, and she scored a massive deal for her sci-fi fantasy novels. I don't know the names of them. I don't really think it's that interesting anymore. But what was interesting was the scandal that she got caught up in, because a few months ago she was busted for leaving negative reviews for other fantasy authors who are her rivals, who also had books coming out at the same time as the book that she had that was going to be released. She also had movie rights that were in the makings for her book, and she had a 3-book deal. However, when she was caught for review bombing for books that had not even been released, and these were all by her rivals, and all of her rivals were people of color, that was when the agency that she was with decided to drop her because of the scandal. And she released a couple of posts where she apologized for what she did, kind of. And it was really interesting because for me, it brought up how for a lot of authors of color, it's specifically really difficult to get into the publishing industry, because even though this is changing on some levels, it is still very much a white-centered space. Writing is still very much a whites-only space. And I discovered how difficult this was throughout my academic journey, and I could get to that at a later date. But with all of this going on about Cait, I was desperate to get her birth chart. And I was looking online for a couple of places that could have had her birth date. So to clarify, the birth date that I have, it's not confirmed, but it's the only one that I had that was available. So some sources were saying that she was 30, others were saying that she was 25. So I have the natal chart pulled up for the one that said that she was 25, because that was the only one that I had on hand. If there is a different birth date, then I have no problem with going back and redoing the natal chart. But this is just going to be my interpretation of her natal chart from the birth date that I was able to find online. So without further ado, let's discuss Cait Corrain's natal chart. Cait Corrain was born June 6, 1998 in Boston, Massachusetts. This makes her a life path 3, and the number 3 is ruled by Jupiter, and it is also co-ruled by Pisces. And this is really interesting because Cait is according to this chart, she is a Pisces South Node, which means that Virgo, and as well as her life path being co-ruled by Pisces, her Jupiter is also conjunct to her South Node in the same sign as Pisces as well. So when it comes to people that have Pisces on the South Node and Virgo on the North Node, in this lifetime, she's supposed to learn how to be more practical in her approaches. She's supposed to be more analytical, more resourceful, as well as to embrace routines. If I was to describe what a Virgo North Node is supposed to do in this lifetime, it is to realize that cutting corners won't get you anywhere. You're not special. Stop being sneaky. Get to work and produce something valuable in terms of material resources and wealth. And when I looked at Cait's natal chart, and we're going to get into that in a minute, she is somebody who was in fact very prone and very susceptible to this type of scandal. It was all over the birth chart. But let's go back to talking about the Pisces South Node. So Pisces in astrology, it is co-ruled by Jupiter. The original rulership of Jupiter is Sagittarius, but Pisces is also considered to be at its home when it's in Jupiter, as well as Neptune. So Pisces rules all things that we can't see. It rules tolerance. It also rules long voyages, education, the arts, specifically when it comes to that Jupiter influence. It is a sign that is seen as being very tolerant because it seeks to merge itself completely with one. Pisces is a sign that really wants no boundaries. So when it's in the South Node, this could make Cait more susceptible to some of those more negative Piscean influences. For one, imprisonment, being sneaky, lying, deception, scandal. Pisces is a sign, in addition to Capricorn, that is very susceptible to scandal, gossip, betrayal, deception, illusions. That is all ruled by Pisces, as well as drug use, specifically when it comes to alcohol. Yeah, because alcohol is a substance. This These are the energies that Cait in this lifetime is supposed to get away from, but I could see how, looking at her chart, this is going to be very difficult. In addition to that, her South Node is also conjunct to the asteroid Pallas, which talks about advice that we need in terms of our life. And when Pallas is in Pisces, one of the things that we have to learn this time in our life is that we need to learn how to lean on and rely on other people. We're supposed to see, if you have Pallas and Pisces, we're supposed to see that we are all one. And this is a lesson that I could see would be very hard for her to get, or it would be one that would be very hard for her to interpret properly, especially because she might be more susceptible to that Piscean energy on its lower octaves, which is to be sneaky, deceptive, lying, gossiping. All of that could have been wrapped up in the negative reviews that she gave on Goodreads in order to take down her competition. And even then, when she was confronted about this by the authors, she once again made up another lie and said that a friend of hers had review bombed the other authors, and it turned out that that friend didn't exist at all. So once again, this was another lie. However, what she's supposed to learn is that we're all one, and to be more tolerant of other people. And I would say that it was also quite racist of her and very strategic that she picked authors of color for her review bombing, because she was trying to take out the competition. Or another interpretation could be to take out the competition that she didn't think should have been there in the first place, which I'm once again like, I don't understand why you would do this, because Cait had a much better deal than what her rivals had for their books. I think that it was like that election, like that movie Election also from 1998 with Reese Witherspoon, where Tracy Flick, her character, the goal, I'm getting on a tangent here, but the movie Election is about like this all-star student who has to win this presidential election for her college transcripts. She also has daddy issues, and there's a teacher that is trying to take her down because she had slept with his coworker, and that coworker got fired because of the affair. So this teacher, the main character, wants to take Tracy down, and Tracy is very slick with everything that she does. And for Tracy, it's not so much about winning, it's about making sure that her opponents lose. And that is the exact same thing that I think was going on with Cait, because there really was no reason for her to do this. I just think that she didn't want them there. And one reason why I think that Cait maybe did not want those authors in the running at all is because of the way that her chart is set up. So the first thing that I noticed, aside from the nodes, is that her sun opposes Pluto. So she's a Gemini, and her sun is at the 15th degree of Gemini, And that's also conjunct with her Mercury and her Mars. So she has a Gemini stellium. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and it's a planet that deals all with third house issues, communications, neighborhoods, K through 12 years, as well as occupying third spaces, so churches, cafes, um, hair salons. All of those I would see as archetypically being a part of Gemini. And on the higher actives, Gemini is very much about it's about manifestation, especially on behalf of others, because it has that binary of the two twins. But in its lower octaves, it can also be very crafty in terms of getting whatever it is that they want. And because she does have that Gemini stellium, she might be somebody who might want to pick fights and argue with people as a way of exercising her mental muscles. This might be a flex. In addition to that, the asteroid Vesta, and Vesta speaks to our living situations or how we would prefer to live, is also in Gemini. So this means that she really does need to have a lot of open communication in her relationships. However, because it is in opposition to her Pluto, which is at the 6th degree of Sagittarius, this means that she's going to have a lot of open enemies in this particular lifetime, because the way that she goes about doing things, it's going to be very sneaky and manipulative, and it will be off brand for the way that everybody else in her generation does things. So to go back to her review bombing, one interpretation of this could be that she really does believe that publishing should be for those who it's for. So it should operate as like a closed system. Gemini also represents cities, so we could say of publishing as a city, it's just to refer to people who look exclusively like her, as opposed to Pluto and Sagittarius, which Sagittarius, because it does have that Jupiter influence, it's very inclusive. It's inclusive of all people, all races, all backgrounds, because Sagittarius represents a wandering in terms of exploring the entire world. So she was born during a time when the world was moving towards opening their options as far as having people from diverse voices and diverse backgrounds. But maybe based on this Gemini stellium, that is not the way that she believes that she should operate. So that could be one reason as to why she maybe wanted to knock out that competition. And in addition to that, in addition to her having a lot of open enemies in this lifetime, her Sun and her Pluto square both of her nodes. So that is a lot of mutable energy that she's going to have. And people that have a lot of mutable energy in their charts, they are people who could be very charming, people who could be like very fun to be around. I don't know how fun she is, especially because she has her Sun squaring her Jupiter in Pisces. And that would make her somebody who would be very arrogant in terms of the way that she thinks about herself and the way that she thinks about other people. She could, in fact, be somebody who really feels like she doesn't need to be around people because they don't really provide her with anything in her mind. That, and she also would be open to scandal again. And I say that because her Mars is also squaring her Jupiter in Pisces, which could make her somebody who is very much open to fighting and conflict. In addition to that, her Mars opposes her Pluto. So this could also make her someone who's very sneaky and manipulative in terms of the way that she mediates conflict. However, because her Mercury is conjunct her Mars and in opposition to her Pluto, this could make her somebody who might make up threats that are all in her head. Like, it's going to represent a distortion of her thinking around mediating conflict. In addition to that, and we have to take the moon with a grain of salt because we don't have her birth time. We don't actually have her confirmed birth date, so we have to take this entire natal chart with a grain of salt. But her moon is really interesting because, for one, it's a quincunx to her sun because she has a Scorpio moon. And having negative aspects to this having negative aspects between the sun and the moon might make it more difficult for someone to access their emotions. Her Scorpio moon is also conjunct with her Chiron in Scorpio. And Chiron is referred colloquially as the who hurt you asteroid because it shows the areas of our lives in which we are missing. If we have Chiron and it's negatively afflicting or conjunct one of our personal planets, it's going to make it very difficult for that person to integrate into society with the rest of us because it's going to be ongoing, especially because it's in her moon, which would mean that it's very much at the forefront of her conscious. People who have a Chiron in Scorpio, it represents people who would feel powerless. And because her Chiron is conjunct her moon, I would assume that she most likely felt powerless growing up in her household. And she decided to fight back in some very sneaky ways as a way of researching, investigating, and then trying to manipulate and overpower somebody. And in addition to this, I think that this wound that she has, I don't know if she'll ever get over it because it's also conjunct to her Psyche in Scorpio. And Psyche is an asteroid that is like Chiron, but imagine Chiron if it was on meth. It's a heightened state to refer to a wound that will never get over. So she might have grown up feeling completely powerless, specifically when it comes to her mother. And she's always going to feel the need to fight back on this. And I'd say that's especially true because her moon is in opposition to her Venus in Taurus. Now, Taurus is in its home when it's in Venus because it refers to a state of being very much invested in earthly pleasures and in earthly delights. And in addition to that, her asteroid Ceres, which refers to our surroundings, that's also in Taurus. So she could be somebody who maybe in the future has a child, maybe a daughter. I don't know anything about her in terms of what her child or mothering preferences are, but that could be a possibility. However, with her moon in opposition to Venus, this means that she's someone who really does not get along with women. In addition, her Taurus, sorry about that, I have some background noise, just deal with that. Her Taurus Venus squares her Neptune in Aquarius, and this will make her subject to scandal, especially when it comes to networks as well as the internet and with her friends, because Aquarius is one of the signs that represents the internet as well as friends and network groups. So this is one of the signs that she would be susceptible to a scandal during this particular lifetime. She also has Venus squaring Uranus, so this could represent a job loss, a divorce. This also could possibly speak to writing or communication that's going to be, how do I explain this? Very spicy, but in an unusual way. I don't know what types of books she wrote, but that could be a possibility with this square. However, with her Mercury trining her Uranus, this means that she's a very good writer. And I'd also say that because she does have that Gemini stellium, she is someone who is most likely an expert in terms of her communication. And as a Virgo North node, she really could channel that and go into writing more books. I think that this is not going to be the last time that we're going to see her. She might come back for a reprise later on. In addition to that, her Mercury trining her Uranus would make her a very good writer. This would make her very funny, very inventive. But like I said, because of that Mercury squared Uranus, she could experience some career setbacks. Her Jupiter in Pisces, and Jupiter is at its home when it's in Pisces because it's co-ruled by Pisces and Sag. This is a really good one because it means that she could potentially come across as being very, my God, that noise. She could come across as being very, how do I explain this? Very compassionate, very sensitive, maybe a strong ancestral connection. However, because her Jupiter in Pisces does square her sun, her Mercury, and her Mars, she could be someone who could be overconfident, especially in terms of her intellectual ability, and she might be unwilling to really work with others. I actually get that very strong that she's somebody who is very much into having a team player. No, I'm sorry, she's not a team player, but she wouldn't want to work with anybody else, especially because she has that Saturn and Aries, and Saturn and Aries is very hard headed. If anybody is listening to this channel, I would say if you're looking for a potential friend, pull up their birth chart. If they have Saturn and Aries, they're going to be very self-serving, extremely self-serving, especially because she has that Saturn and Aries at the 29th degree. That's the anaretic degree. That's the crisis degree. That means that she's most likely going to be put in situations where she will be forced to deal with the consequences of choosing to focus exclusively on herself. And in addition to that, she has her Lilith, and Lilith refers to our deepest desires that might come out in some ways that won't be very helpful to us. Her Lilith in Libra means that she is always going to struggle in terms of having open enemies, and I think that because she does have her she does have her Gemini stellium, her Sun, Mercury, and Mars trining with that Lilith in Libra. She's okay with this for the most part. I don't think that this is something that she feels bad about at all. I think that maybe she felt like she was entitled to do this. She was entitled to be this sneaky. She was entitled to review bomb the rivals and their books before they came out. And I think that she was okay with just accepting this. I do also want to say that Libra represents publishing as well. So she could have been somebody who is going to struggle with publishing maybe for the rest of her life. She definitely did because she lost those contracts. Now let's talk a little bit more about her Uranus. So she has her Uranus conjunct to her Neptune. This is a very rare conjunction in astrology. I want to say the last time this happened was more than 100 years ago. But this would make her someone who's very creative. This would make her a bomb writer, and she has unique talents and very unorthodox views, specifically around her sexuality, her religion, and her spirituality. I really do think that all of this air energy that she had was the reason as to why she was able to write her book so quickly. In addition to that, her Mars trining her Uranus would make her very intuitive and creative. However, her Mars in opposition to Pluto would make her somebody who would want to fight people a lot. It would make her very suspicious. And I think that a lot of these ideas are going to be very off. Next, let's talk about a little bit more about the scandal in general in terms of her astrology. So she has her moon squaring her Neptune. This to me would be a sign that she has most likely endured abuse in her home. So either physical abuse, maybe her parents had a domestic violence issue, or maybe she had undergone some sort of abuse. But it does look as though she does struggle in terms of having boundaries with people, especially when it comes to women. There could have been incidences where there were no boundaries in between either her or her mom, and it might have made her very, very susceptible to being taken advantage of in the past. And this could also be an energy that maybe she is more comfortable with putting out in terms of in terms of her public life currently as a writer. Her moon also squares her Uranus. This would make her someone who is very lonely. I don't think that she has any friends, looking at this chart and the other aspects that I covered. And this could be possibly because, as I said before, since she has that Chiron and her Psyche conjunct with her moon in Scorpio, she's always going to try to attempt to manipulate and overpower others. This will leave her abandoned, but I don't see her as somebody who is going to have a lot of friends throughout her life because of this. And I want to talk about one more square that she has, and we'll talk about the protection that she has. So, as I said before, she has her Saturn in Aries at the 29th degree, which is the anaretic degree. This is going to refer to crisis situations, third party situations, in opposition to her Lilith and Libra. So, this will make her somebody who is going to upset a lot of people due to her self serving behavior. In addition to that, her Saturn squares her Neptune in Aquarius, and this is going to make her someone who will be very scandalous this lifetime. There's could be a lot of discord among her ancestors in terms of her behavior, and she will experience a lot of losses through scandal, through rumors, possibly through this behavior being very sneaky. And this is something that she most likely is very comfortable with because she is a Pisces South node. Um, her moon is in opposition to her Saturn, so this would mean that I mean, for those of us who are rejoicing about this, she's gonna be broke. She's gonna have a hard time keeping money. She will have more than one marriage. I do feel like I know that she's currently married. I think that marriage isn't going to last, especially because she has that Venus square Uranus, and any chart that's going to be an automatic divorce. But she will have another marriage, and she would also be prone to slander because her selfish behavior is going to be caught up a lot. It's going to get her caught up a lot, and we saw that in terms of her review bombs. This isn't going to be the last time that she will get involved in something like this, unfortunately. And this also isn't going to be the last time that we hear from her. I don't think so, especially because we have that we have that sun in opposition to Pluto. Also, I do want to talk a little bit more about some of the protection that she has because I did see some protection in her chart. One of those aspects is going to be because her Saturn is sextiling her Neptune. So that is going to provide her with some protection in terms of maybe having this die down for a little bit, or she might get a reprisal, or she might come out on the internet again because we do have Neptune in Aquarius, and that's the internet. She could possibly be somebody who will come out again and try to write again, and maybe appear to be more contrite and apologetic. She also has her Uranus sextiling her Pluto. So I do think that she's going to get a lucky break from somewhere. Somebody is going to come out and give her some support because Pluto does also deal with support. I don't know who those people are, but I don't think that this is going to be the last time that we're going to hear from her. And then lastly, let's talk about her asteroid Juno. Juno refers to the themes that are going to be prevalent throughout our relationships in our life, and her Juno is conjunct to her North Node in Virgo. So I would take this to mean that she will find satisfaction through her hard work, and I do see her as somebody who is a writer. I do not like what she did, especially as an author, not at all, but she is somebody that we're going to hear from again, and maybe she will get her lesson. I don't know. I mean, she does have a lot of like scandalous aspects in the chart, but we'll see where she is. I can say that I'm glad that the publishers did pull her book because this was a pretty big scandal to have, but I think that also shows that we're in a different era, especially because right now we are in Pluto and Capricorn, so we've gone past Sagittarius and we could be more inclusive. This is going to be where I'm just going to wrap this up because I'm getting tired of the noise that's going on out my window. But I hope that you enjoyed this, and make sure to tune in for the next video.